In Amazon's Rings of Power Season 2, Episode 1, we see their interpretation of Sauron's reincarnation. That is, how Sauron gained a new body after his previous one was killed. Now, this instance is not one of the official deaths and rebirths of Sauron, but we do know that this process happens several times. We will eventually get to see one of the reincarnations according to the books in the Rings of Power show, his reincarnation after the fall of Numenor. Sauron's defeat and destruction in the War of the Ring is the most commonly known instance. This is where Frodo the Hobbit carries the One Ring to Mount Doom, where it is destroyed, ridding Sauron and his source of power, because he had poured his will and power into it. But Gandalf lifted up his arms and called once more in a clear voice, "Stand, men of the West, stand and wait. This is the hour of doom." And even as he spoke, the earth rocked beneath their feet. Then rising swiftly up, far above the towers of the Black Gate, high above the mountains, a vast soaring darkness sprang into the sky, flickering with fire. The earth groaned and quaked. The towers of the Teeth swayed, tottered, and fell down. The mighty rampart crumbled. The Black Gate was hurled in ruin. And from far away, now dim, now growing, now mounting to the clouds, there came a drumming rumble, a roar, a long echoing roll of ruinous noise. "The realm of Sauron is ended," said Gandalf. "The Ring-Bearer has fulfilled his quest." Before that, his body was killed when he was overthrown on the slopes of Orodruin under the leadership of Gil-galad and Elendil in the last alliance of elves and men. "I was the herald of Gil-galad and marched with his host. I was at the battle of Dagorlad before the Black Gate of Mordor, where we had the mastery. For the spear of Gil-galad and the sword of Elendil, Aeglas, and Narsil, none could withstand. I beheld the last combat on the slopes of Orodruin, where Gil-galad died, and Elendil fell, and Narsil broke beneath him. But Sauron himself was overthrown, and Isildur cut the ring from his hand with the hilt shard of his father's sword, and took it for his own. Fruitless did I call the victory of the last alliance? Not wholly so, yet it did not achieve its end. Sauron was diminished, but not destroyed. His ring was lost, but not unmade. The Dark Tower was broken, but its foundations were not removed, for they were made with the power of the ring, and while it remains, they will endure. Before that, his body was destroyed because he was on Numenor when it was drowned under the sea. But Ar-Pharazôn was not yet deceived, and it came into his mind that, for the better keeping of Sauron and his oaths of fealty, he should be brought to Numenor, and there to dwell as a hostage for himself and all his servants in Middle-earth. To this Sauron assented as one constrained, yet in his secret thought he received it gladly, for it chimed with his desire. And Sauron passed over the sea and looked upon the land of Numenor, and on the city of Armenelos in the days of its glory, and he was astounded, but his heart within was filled the more with envy and hate. Yet such was the cunning of his mind and mouth, and the strength of his hidden will, that ere 3 years had passed, he had become closest to the secret counsels of the king. For flattery, sweet as honey, was ever on his tongue, and knowledge he had of many things, yet unrevealed to men. Thus Ar-Pharazôn, king of the land of the Star, grew to the mightiest tyrant that had yet been in the world since the reign of Morgoth, though in truth Sauron ruled all from behind the throne. And Andor, the land of gift, Numenor of the kings, Elena of the Star of Eärendil, was utterly destroyed. For it was nigh to the east of the great rift, and its foundations were overturned, and it fell and went down into the darkness, and is no more. And there is now not upon earth any place abiding where the memory of a time without evil is preserved. For Ilúvatar cast back the great seas west of Middle-earth, and the empty lands east of it, and new lands and new seas were made, and the world was diminished. For Valinor and Eressia were taken into the realm of hidden things. And Sauron, sitting in his black seat in the midst of the temple, had laughed when he heard the trumpets of Ar-Pharazôn sounding for battle. And again he had laughed when he heard the thunder of the storm. And a third time, even as he laughed at his own thought, thinking what he would do now in the world, being rid of the Adain forever. He was taken in the midst of his mirth, and his seat and his temple fell into the abyss. Quick note, his body was defeated before in the First Age when Huan and Luthien came to the rescue of Beren, but he had shape-shifted into a vampire and flew away just before he was killed. But no wizardry, nor spell, neither fang nor venom, nor devil's art, nor beast strength could overthrow Huan of Valinor, and he took his foe by the throat and pinned him down. Then Sauron shifted shape from wolf to serpent, and from monster to his own accustomed form. But he could not elude the grip of Huan without forsaking his body utterly. Ere his foul spirit left its dark house, Luthien came to him, and said that he should be stripped of his raiment of flesh, and his ghost be sent quaking back to Morgoth. And she said, "There, everlasting, thy naked self shall endure the torment of his scorn, pierced by his eyes, unless thou yield to me the mastery of thy tower." Then Sauron yielded himself, and Luthien took the mastery of the isle and all that was there, and Huan released him, and immediately he took the form of a vampire, great as a dark cloud across the moon, and he fled, dripping blood from his throat upon the trees, and came to Tower Narfuin, and dwelt there, filling it with horror. Each time Sauron's body was killed, he lost power, and each time it took him even longer to build a new body. After his body drowned in Numenor, his spirit fled to Mordor, and his body could no longer assume a fair shape or visage. He was taken in the midst of his mirth, and his seat and his temple fell into the abyss. But Sauron was not of mortal flesh, and though he was robbed now of that shape in which he had wrought so great an evil, so that he could never again appear fair to the eyes of men, yet his spirit arose out of the deep, and passed as a shadow and a black wind over the sea, and came back to Middle-earth, and to Mordor, that was his home. There he took up again his great ring and Barad-dûr, and dwelt there, dark and silent, until he wrought himself a new guise, an image of malice and hatred made visible, and the eye of Sauron the Terrible few could endure. After Isildur cut off the One Ring, he took even longer, around 1,000 years, to build a body. He didn't just build a giant eye like in the movies, though the lidless eye was his symbol, but he built a body. Because he had poured it took this long because he had poured most of his power, strength, and will into the One Ring. Some here will remember that many years ago, I myself dared to pass the doors of the necromancer in Dol Guldur, and secretly explored his ways, and found thus that our fears were true. He was none other than Sauron, our enemy of old, at length taking shape and power again. Some, too, will remember also that Saruman dissuaded us from open deeds against him, and for long we watched him only. Yet at last, as his shadow grew, Sauron yielded, and the council put forth its strength and drove the evil out of Mirkwood. And that was in the very year of the finding of this ring. A strange chance, if chance it was. But we were too late, as Elrond foresaw. Sauron also had watched us, and had long prepared against our stroke, governing Mordor from afar through Minas Morgul, where his 9 servants dwelt, until all was ready. Then he gave way before us, but only feigned to flee, and soon after came to the Dark Tower and openly declared himself. After Frodo destroyed the One Ring, Sauron could no longer inhabit a physical form, but was a malevolent spirit. "The realm of Sauron is ended," said Gandalf. "The ring-bearer has fulfilled his quest." And as the captains gazed south to the land of Mordor, it seemed to them that black against the pall of cloud there rose a huge shape of shadow, impenetrable, lightning-crowned, filling all the sky. Enormous it reared above the world, and stretched out towards them a vast, threatening hand. terrible, but impotent. For even as it leaned over them, a great wind took it, and it was all blown away and passed. And then a hush fell. Thanks for watching. Comment below with any questions or topics you want discussed. Make sure to like or subscribe with notifications if you haven't already.